The sun had barely begun its ascent over the Syrian desert, painting the sand in streaks of gold and orange. Captain Ethan Cole sat in the cockpit of the military transport helicopter, staring out at the endless dunes below. His uniform was spotless, his gear meticulously arranged, everything about him screamed discipline. But inside, a quiet tension churned. Ethan had been on countless missions over the years, from Iraq to Afghanistan, but this assignment was different. Intelligence had pointed to the resurgence of a terrorist network known as Black Viper, notorious for targeting military personnel and civilians alike. He had a clear objective: infiltrate their operations, gather intel, and neutralize any threats. But the thought of his family, thousands of miles away in Virginia, gnawed at him. A soft buzz from his satellite phone broke his concentration. He glanced at it, seeing the familiar name on the screen, Lena Cole. "Hey, Ethan," her voice was light, cheerful. "Maya's been practicing her science presentation all morning. You've got to see it when you get back." A small smile tugged at Ethan's lips. "I'll be there, I promise. Don't let her eat all the chocolate while I'm gone." Lena laughed, a sound that cut through the desert silence like sunlight through clouds. "I can't guarantee that, Captain." Ethan watched his daughter appear briefly on the video call, waving her tiny hands. His heart tightened. 7 years old, smart as a whip, fearless, his little girl carried the Cole stubbornness in her eyes. "Give her a hug for me," he said softly. "I will," Lena whispered. He ended the call, tucking the phone away, and turned his focus back to the mission. Discipline, Ethan reminded himself. Focus. The operation that day went like clockwork. Ethan's team infiltrated a suspected Black Viper safehouse on the outskirts of Raqqa. He moved with the quiet efficiency of a predator, every step measured, every breath controlled. Inside, they discovered a small cache of weapons, improvised explosives, and documents pointing to new recruits being trained for operations abroad. It was a victory, but not a celebration. Every piece of intel pulled back the curtain just a little, showing how deep and far-reaching Black Viper had become. Night fell, and the desert winds rose, carrying with them the faint smell of smoke and sand. Ethan sat alone in the observation tent, going over maps and dossiers. He could hear the low hum of generators, the occasional shout of soldiers returning from patrols, and the distant howl of a lone desert fox. He thought of his family again. Of the cozy home he had built for them, the nights spent reading bedtime stories to Maya, the mornings with coffee and quiet laughter with Lena. All of it felt fragile, like a mirage in the desert. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself a fleeting thought of fear, not for himself, but for them. He shook it off. Fear had no place here. Only discipline. Only duty. Back in Virginia, life was ordinary and perfect in its quietness. Lena was preparing breakfast, humming softly. Maya ran circles around the living room with a homemade science project in hand, a small volcano that fizzled and popped with every shake of vinegar. No one noticed the black van that had been parked across the street since dawn, engine idling, its tinted windows hiding the faces within. The van was silent, unassuming, a shadow waiting. Ethan's name appeared in the headlines of a local newspaper that morning: "Local hero returns from Middle East mission." They didn't know that being a hero sometimes came with a price. In the desert, Ethan slept for only a few hours, the hum of machinery and the desert wind his lullaby. He woke before dawn, boots laced, uniform pressed, mind sharp. Orders from command came down like clockwork. Another Recon mission. Another day in a war zone. And somewhere, thousands of miles away, a plan was already unfolding, one that would rip his world apart, turning the calm before the storm into an inferno. The day had begun like any other in Ethan Cole's absence. Lena moved through the house with quiet efficiency, preparing breakfast and double-checking Maya's school bag. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the living room where Maya had set up her science project the night before, a small, meticulously crafted volcano made from clay and baking soda. Lena smiled as she placed a plate of pancakes on the table. "Maya, breakfast before we go test your volcano?" Maya's eyes sparkled. "Can we do it outside today, Mom?" "Yes, sweetie. We'll go out after school and show your friends. They didn't notice the subtle vibrations in the air at first, a faint hum like the growl of a far-off engine. The black van had been parked across the street for hours, its presence invisible to casual observation. Inside, two figures worked silently, checking wires, timers, and a small, crude device that would soon turn their world into ash. Thousands of miles away, Ethan was in a sandstorm in Syria, reading intel reports about Black Viper's latest movements. He had no idea the war had come to his doorstep. He didn't hear the distant echoes of destruction or the laughter that would be replaced by screams. The first explosion tore through the morning like a physical punch. Glass shattered, walls splintered, and a shockwave knocked Lena and Maya to the floor. The small clay volcano toppled, its ingredients spilling across the hardwood, as the house became a cage of fire and smoke. Lena crawled toward Maya, coughing, her hands blistered from flying debris. She found her daughter pinned beneath a fallen beam. Maya, hold on, baby, Mom's here. But the world had shifted irreversibly. The smoke choked their lungs, and the heat burned with a merciless intensity. The screams, sharp and piercing, carried through the neighborhood, attracting neighbors who could do little but watch in horror. By the time emergency responders arrived, the house was a smoldering skeleton. Flames licked the edges of what had once been a warm home, and the acrid smell of burned wood and plastic filled the air. Two small, lifeless figures were pulled from the rubble. Ethan's phone rang. The satellite signal crackled, faint and broken. Captain Cole. The voice was trembling. This is Virginia PD, your home. There was an explosion. The rest of the words were drowned out by a sense of unreality. Ethan's stomach dropped. His hand shook as he fumbled for clarity. Where, my family? His voice was barely more than a whisper. I'm so sorry, sir. We're still recovering them. Ethan sank to his knees on the desert sand. The wind carried no comfort here. No mission, no victory could undo. The images forming in his mind, the smiling faces of Lena and Maya replaced by charred rubble and silence. Within hours, intelligence sources confirmed the symbol left at the scene, a black viper coiled around a skull, painted in ominous black ink on a partially standing wall. It was a signature, a message. Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the photos sent to him via secure line. The symbol mocked him, declaring war, and delivering a single, merciless truth: Black Viper had found him. There was no time for grief. Only rage. Only planning. Only retribution. Ethan requested immediate clearance to pursue the attackers. Orders came slowly, bureaucratically, but Ethan had learned long ago that when the law faltered, action became its own justice. He began to map out every possible lead, every route, every connection that might point to the perpetrators. The first target would be Farid al-Rashid, the explosives expert known to have worked with Black Viper for years. Ethan studied his dossier in silence, memorizing layouts, safehouse locations, and routines. Each fact etched itself into his mind with the precision of a soldier preparing for battle. Grief gave way to a darker energy, a relentless focus fueled by anger. Every step Ethan had taken as a soldier had prepared him for this moment, but nothing could prepare him for the hollow ache of a world without his family. That night, under the desert stars, Ethan made a silent vow. "I will find them all," he whispered into the wind. "I will hunt every last one. And when I do, they will know the meaning of fear." The desert night was cold, the wind sharp against Ethan Cole's face as he sat in the shadows of a ruined outpost on the outskirts of Raqqa. His eyes scanned a digital map projected on his tablet. Every mark, every red dot, represented a piece of a puzzle he intended to solve. Black Viper was no ordinary terrorist network. Their operations spanned continents, funded by hidden pockets of wealth, and executed by men and women who had mastered the art of leaving no trace. But Ethan had something they could never understand: a personal vendetta. The first threads using a combination of military intelligence and personal investigation, Ethan began tracing Farid al-Rashid, the explosives expert who had orchestrated the Virginia attack. Satellite images placed Farid in a small, fortified compound near Mosul. Rumors suggested he was training new recruits, preparing them for attacks in Europe and the Middle East. Ethan's plan was methodical. He would gather every scrap of information before making a move. Every patrol, every guard rotation, every supply delivery was logged. He knew the risks: one wrong step, one miscalculation, and he could be dead long before reaching Farid. He spent hours in the desert heat, observing, waiting, and taking notes. Night after night, he watched the compound through high-powered scopes. He memorized patrol routes, security cameras, even the faint flicker of Farid's cigarette smoke at midnight. The cost of solitude days turned into weeks. Ethan ate little, slept less. His world had narrowed to a single focus: vengeance. The grief that had threatened to consume him now fueled him, transforming sorrow into lethal precision. He thought often of Lena and Maya. He pictured their smiles, their laughter, the quiet mornings before school, the soft bedtime stories. Those memories became his armor. Every step he took toward Black Viper was for them. But solitude came at a price. At night, when the desert was silent, he sometimes imagined their voices calling to him. He refused to answer. Emotions were a luxury he could not afford, not now. A hidden ally. While Ethan worked alone, he was not entirely without resources. Contacts within the Pentagon and intelligence community provided him with discreet updates, intercepted communications, smuggled reports, and encrypted messages. None could intervene directly, fearing bureaucratic backlash, but they quietly supplied him with tools and knowledge. Ethan didn't trust anyone fully. Allies in his world were temporary. But for now, these fragments of information gave him the edge he needed. The first strike plan: after weeks of surveillance, Ethan finally had the intel he needed. Farid's compound had weak points: a perimeter fence that was poorly maintained, a guard rotation pattern that left the southwest corner unmanned for exactly 2 minutes every hour, and a small supply shed with a side entrance overlooked by the main gates. Ethan studied the plan endlessly, running through scenarios in his mind. Every contingency, every threat. He was meticulous, calculating risk as if life itself depended on it, because it did. He packed his gear for infiltration: silenced pistols, combat knife, night vision goggles, and a lightweight drone for last-minute surveillance. As he stood at the edge of the desert overlooking the compound, he whispered to the wind, "Tonight, I begin. Tonight, I make them pay." The first strike of vengeance was about to begin, and Ethan Cole would not falter. Foreshadowing the conspiracy in the shadows, Farid al-Rashid smoked a cigarette, unaware that every movement had been anticipated. He didn't know that the man plotting his death was fueled by loss deeper than any battlefield mission. And somewhere beyond Farid, in the corridors of wealth and power, Marcus Sloan watched from afar, confident that his hands were clean. But vengeance has a way of piercing the highest walls. Ethan didn't know the full scope yet, but he would. And when he did, every piece of Black Viper would fall. The night was a blanket of darkness, punctuated only by the faint glimmer of stars over Mosul. Ethan Cole crouched atop a ridge overlooking the Black Viper compound, his breath steady, his eyes cold. Every movement had been planned, every risk calculated. There was no room for error. Farid al-Rashid's compound was a fortress by ordinary standards: tall concrete walls, guard towers, and razor wire, but Ethan had studied it for weeks. He knew every patrol route, every blind spot, every corner where a shadow could hide. Tonight, those shadows were his allies. Infiltration: Ethan descended the ridge silently, rolling across the sand to avoid snapping twigs and loose gravel. His silenced pistol rested comfortably in his hand. The night vision goggles gave him a green-hued clarity of the compound below. 2 guards paced near the southwest corner, exactly where Ethan expected. He waited, counting the seconds. When they moved past the blind spot, he darted forward, slipping through the low fence and onto the gravel path beyond. He avoided the main gate entirely, sticking to shadows, crawling past sandbags and supply crates. The compound smelled faintly of smoke, oil, and human sweat, signs of men who had no idea death was already inside their walls. Eliminating the threat inside, Ethan moved like a ghost. 1 guard passed him, oblivious. Ethan's hand shot out, gripping the man's wrist and twisting it with a practiced motion. A single, muffled choke, and the man slumped silently. 2 more guards entered a storage shed. Ethan had already predicted this. They never knew what hit them. He neutralized them quickly, efficiently, leaving no sign of struggle, no hint of his presence. Finally, he reached the inner courtyard. Farid was there, standing by a table, examining a map. The man's back was to him. "You killed my family," Ethan whispered as he stepped into the light, voice low and venomous. Farid turned, surprise flashing across his face, quickly replaced by smug confidence. "Captain Cole. I wondered how long it would take for you to arrive." Ethan didn't answer. His silenced pistol spoke for him. Farid ducked, moving for cover, but Ethan was already calculating the trajectory, accounting for the uneven ground, the shadows, and the bullet drop. The first shot hit Farid in the shoulder, dropping his weapon. Pain and rage contorted his face. Ethan moved faster than the eye could follow, taking cover behind crates, keeping the pressure constant. Interrogation in fire, Ethan forced Farid into the storage shed, pushing the man to his knees. Blood ran from the wound on Farid's shoulder, and his confidence faltered. "Who hired you?" Ethan demanded, voice cold. "Who ordered my family killed?" Farid laughed, a weak, broken sound. "You don't understand. It's bigger than me. Bigger than any of this. You have no idea what you're getting into. You blew up my house. You took my wife. My daughter. You ended my life." Ethan's hands shook with barely contained fury. "Tell me. Now." Farid gasped for breath, pain making him wheeze. They're protected, powerful. You'll never stop them." Ethan raised his pistol higher. "I already have stopped you." One more shot ended Farid's life. The man slumped silently, leaving only the echo of his warning. Ethan stood in the shed, chest heaving, staring at the lifeless body. The first strike was complete. But Farid's words rang in his ears, someone higher, someone untouchable. The revelation before leaving, Ethan rifled through Farid's belongings, maps, and digital files. There it was, a name, hidden within encrypted files, financial records, and secret communications, Marcus Sloan. A shadow in the background, wealthy, untouchable, pulling strings from the comfort of his office. He was the architect of Ethan's pain. The one who had orchestrated the death of his family, the one who had hired Black Viper. Ethan's eyes burned with renewed fury. The first strike had been just the beginning. Farid was gone, but the snake's head remained, waiting to be cut off. As dawn broke over the desert, Ethan vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only a trail of destruction, a warning to those who thought themselves safe. The hunt had begun in earnest, and nothing, no fear, no law, no human obstacle would stop him. The desert sun was relentless, baking the sand into a golden furnace as Captain Ethan Cole moved silently through the remnants of war-torn villages on the outskirts of Mosul. Farid al-Rashid was dead, but the truth of the conspiracy lingered like smoke, slippery, dangerous, and deadly. Ethan had learned a vital lesson: vengeance was not just about brute force. Precision, patience, and understanding the enemy's network were key. Farid had been a piece of the puzzle. Now it was time to chase the head of the snake. The web unravels using Farid's files. Ethan traced Black Viper's funding to a network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and covert arms shipments. Each link pointed to Marcus Sloan, a billionaire defense contractor with ties to government officials and global intelligence agencies. Sloan had maintained a spotless public image, a philanthropist, a patriot, but behind the facade lay a man willing to destroy anyone who threatened his empire. Ethan moved through the shadows of international safehouses, tracking shipments, decoding encrypted messages, and following financial trails. He became a ghost in every city, unseen, unknown, unstoppable. Close calls Black Viper operatives were everywhere, and they were hunting him just as fiercely as he hunted them. In Istanbul, a sniper's bullet whizzed past his shoulder as he exited a cafe. In Dubai, an explosive trap detonated mere feet from where he slept. Each attack reminded Ethan that Sloan's reach was immense, his enemies relentless. But Ethan thrived under pressure. He used each attempt on his life to sharpen his skills further, learning their methods, predicting their moves. By now, his enemies were beginning to fear the man who had lost everything but refused to fall. The tactical advantage weeks of surveillance revealed a critical insight. Sloan had a private operations center hidden beneath one of his warehouses in Colorado. It was heavily guarded, shielded by technology, and protected by layers of legal and physical security. Ethan studied every entry point, every security camera, every routine of Sloan's guards. Unlike Farid, this mission would require patience, ingenuity, and precision. One wrong step could mean the end, not just for him, but for the chance to finally dismantle the man responsible for his family's death. Moral reckoning. Ethan's journey had transformed him. Where once he had been a soldier bound by orders, he was now an agent of justice defined by his own moral compass. His grief had hardened into focus, but sometimes, in quiet moments, he wondered whether vengeance would ever be enough to fill the void left by Lena and Maya. He did not allow himself to dwell. There was no time. Every hour lost allowed Marcus Sloan to continue funding terrorism, endangering innocent lives. This was bigger than personal revenge. It had become a mission to prevent more tragedy. The plan is set. Ethan returned to a safe house, walls lined with maps, surveillance, photos, and encrypted laptops. He laid out the final plan: infiltrate Sloan's Colorado operations center, expose his network, and neutralize the man who had caused his world to collapse. He knew it would not be simple. Sloan's influence ran deep: corrupt politicians, corporate security, legal immunity, but Ethan had already faced death in deserts, alleys, and war zones. Sloan's empire, built on greed and fear, was about to face a force it could not comprehend. As night fell over Mosul, Ethan packed his gear for the journey to America. He paused, looking at a photograph of Lena and Maya in his wallet, their smiles frozen in time. "This ends soon," he whispered. "For you, and for every life he's ruined." Foreshadowing the showdown, Marcus Sloan, miles away in a luxurious penthouse, was unaware that the soldier he had tried to erase from existence was already steps ahead. Every move Ethan made was methodical, every shadow a weapon. The snake's head was within reach, and when Ethan struck, there would be no escape. The plane touched down on U.S. soil under cover of night, its engines quiet against the empty runway. Captain Ethan Cole stepped off, his boots hitting the tarmac like a drumbeat of vengeance. The air was crisp, familiar, and full of ghosts. Every breath reminded him of Lena, Maya, and the life ripped from him. Ethan had crossed continents, survived ambushes, explosives, and bullets, and now the final hunt lay before him. Marcus Sloan, untouchable to most, was about to face the full force of a man who had nothing left to lose. Infiltration begins. Colorado. Sloan's operations center was hidden beneath a massive corporate warehouse, fortified with high-tech security, armed guards, and surveillance cameras. It was a fortress built for power, but not for a ghost like Ethan. He had studied every blueprint, memorized every patrol, every camera rotation, and every entrance. Using a combination of stolen security codes, a drone to scout blind spots, and his unparalleled combat skills, Ethan slipped inside without detection. Every step through the sterile, dimly lit corridors was calculated. Every shadow became cover, every corner a tactical advantage. The confrontation. Ethan reached the central office, where Marcus Sloan waited, confident, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Captain Cole," Sloan said, calm and composed. "I knew you'd come eventually. You murdered my family," Ethan said, voice icy, every syllable sharpened with years of pain and rage. "You destroyed everything I loved." Sloan smirked. "I protect my empire. You were just collateral damage. You should have stayed dead." Ethan raised his silenced pistol. Sloan's eyes widened. He realized, too late, that all his wealth, influence, and power could not save him. The first shot was precise, striking Sloan in the shoulder, forcing him to drop his weapon. Guards scrambled, alarms blared, but Ethan had already predicted their movements. Within moments, he neutralized the first line of defense, moving with the precision and efficiency of a shadow. Revealing the truth before ending the man who had caused his world to collapse, Ethan accessed Sloan's secure servers. Financial records, communications with Black Viper, illegal arms deals, and terrorism funding. Every secret was exposed. Within hours, federal authorities were alerted. Sloane's empire, built on lies and corruption, crumbled before the public eye. His political allies disavowed him, corporations severed ties, and the media branded him a traitor. Justice had been delivered, not only for Ethan's family but for countless others Sloane had endangered. Final confrontation. Ethan approached Sloane one last time. The man tried to beg, to bargain, but it was too late. Every ounce of rage, grief, and determination culminated in one final act. The shot that ended Marcus Sloane's life was quiet but definitive. A lifetime of manipulation, greed, and murder had been stopped by a single man who refused to bow to fear. Ethan walked away as sirens approached. The world would never know the full story, but he did. And for the first time since that morning in Virginia, he felt the weight lift slightly from his shoulders. The aftermath. Ethan returned to Virginia, to the ruins of his home. Charred beams and ash marked where laughter had once lived. He knelt at the foundation, placing a small toy soldier, a gift from Maya, on the ground. "I got them," he whispered to the wind. "I got every last one." The wind stirred, carrying a sense of quiet finality. Ethan allowed himself to feel grief, to mourn, and, for the first time, to breathe. Survival and vengeance had cost him everything, but they had also brought justice. He walked away from the ruins, a soldier tempered by loss, a man who had stared into the abyss and returned stronger, ready to live again in a world where shadows could no longer harm those he loved.